Now that I see Tommy removing the Báinne sweater, would somebody tell me something that I wanted to know for a long time? How did the Báinne sweater bit start?
We had a manager who saw him, a good Jewish boy from New York. He saw us walking in one very wintry day with him to a rehearsal, and he said, "That's what you'll wear," because we couldn't decide. We had white shirts and
how we got them, Gay, is our mother, the Clancy's mother, sent over 3 of them to Willie, Paddy and I.
Yeah.
And I had bought one out of Martin Standon's in Galway.
Yeah.
Martin, there's a plug for you.
83 years later.
Very good.
And
we wore them. It was winter time.
yes.
And our manager saw them and he said, "That's what I want. I want something to show that you're from Ireland, etc." And
It's what they call in the business now packaging.
Right.
He was looking for a package to put us in, you know.
He was a smart boy, wasn't he?
But they were very unusual at that time, Gay. I mean, very few people had them. I mean, I remember wearing one and people saying, "Where'd you get it? Looks lovely, you know. Is it Norwegian or something?"
Do you ski?
In fact, we were going to do a concert in some place in Connecticut one time, and we got into this taxi, and we had the sweaters tied around our necks, you know. And Tom was looking very burly, and we were talking. The taxi driver kept looking over his shoulder at us. And the address where we were doing the concert was at a gym, you see?
stadium.
Yeah. And he said, "You guys are wrestlers or something?" Well, but you know, he could have been, right?
There was a wrestling team going to do a match at the university in Connecticut that day.
Russian wrestlers.
Yeah, because Gorgeous George was on the train with us. You remember Gorgeous
Oh,
George?
yes,
with the
I
blonde?
remember that. The fellow with the big blonde head of hair and so on.
Tell me this, lads. Now, we've all heard about the Ed Sullivan Show. I'll be darting around the place tonight, trying to figure out how it all started and how it came all together and so on. But the Ed Sullivan Show was the cruncher, wasn't
That's
it?
right, yes.
Yes. Tell me about that now. When was it, first of all?
When was it?
It was 1961.
61, yes.
Yeah.
We were playing down in Greenwich Village in a club called One Sheridan Square with the famous jazz singer Josh White,
Yeah.
blues guitarist and singer. And his manager was a Jewish New York manager who spotted what we were about, but couldn't figure out how he was going to fit us into the business.
Was this Martin?
This
now?
the same
Marty
Martin,
Ehrlichman.
Yeah.
So he mulled us over. He figured that we had talent, that there was some kind of excitement there, and he didn't know how to utilize it. So he decided he would put us into an uptown club called the Blue Angel, which is a very, very fancy place. It was one of those places where the walls, instead of wallpaper or paint, they had mattresses on them.
They were upholstered.
You know, nobody in the entire place spoke English.
Not even ourselves.
I remember one night Ava Gardner sitting there, and the manager another night came to us and says, "Gentlemen, please no rebel songs tonight. Edward and Mrs. Simpson are out front."
And they couldn't speak English either.
But they had a good grace to leave before we started doing our thing. But in putting us in there was a kind of a stepping stone onto the Ed Sullivan Show. And that's where the packaging came in.
Yes.
He didn't know what we could wear because we looked like terrible slobs.
Yeah.
And when he saw the 4 sweaters, he said, "That's it. That's it. That's what you're going to wear."
But now, to come on to the Ed
The
Sullivan
actual show, yeah.
That place was a place where the Ed Sullivan Talent Scouts went to see new talent. And they came there when we were there one night. Jack Dempsey and Jim Downey and the man from the Ed Sullivan Show. And they came and asked us right then and there if we'd do some of the Ed Sullivan Show. But it was the kind of a place now that our manager, Marty Ehrlichman, had another client that he asked us if we would allow his client to do one of the sets for half an hour in the middle of, instead of us. We said, surely, you know. And she was a very pretty girl, and she went on and she did some beautiful songs, and her name was Barbara Streisand.
Well,
And so she, of course, became very famous, and we lost our manager.
when you say she was a very pretty girl, I remember distinctly Marty Ehrlichman says, "This chick," he said, "that I've got is going to be the next Judy Garland, if I can get her to have a nose job."
Well, even with that. But what happened on the actual Ed Sullivan Show, which was a showcase for talent on television and so on?
Well, we went up on the Sunday to do it, and we were to do 2 songs. And when Ed Sullivan came on and saw us, he sort of liked us. And there was somebody supposed to be on another act, supposed to be on the show, and they didn't show up or something happened. And instead of getting somebody else, he expanded our section on.
And how many did you
He
do?
asked us to improvise an extra 15 minutes. So we ended up with an unprecedented 18 or 20 minutes on the show, which was unheard of.
At that time.
Wearing the Aran sweaters, of course. And within the following week, we heard that the sale of Aran sweaters jumped 700%.
No, to give an idea of how, there's 40 million people used to watch that show. And we were around New York, and at that time, our following was folk music people, not Irish necessarily, or very few Irish.
Very few Irish, yeah.
But once we got on the Ed Sullivan show, it's like getting a blessing from the Pope at that time. He was looked up to by all the Irish.
Like Gay Byrne.
Something like the Late Late Show, indeed. I was just about to say.
And when the following day after that, we went out to Chicago, and Tom and I were walking down the street looking for a place to stay. And there was fellas, now we hadn't been in Chicago before. Fellas saw us, they probably recognized the sweaters over our shoulders. And they said, "Hi, boys, you did a great show last night." Tom turned around to me and said, "Hey, we're famous. We're famous."